Have you ever wondered how a single moment can completely transform someone's life? Today's story will show you that sometimes, miracles happen in the most unexpected ways. If this touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more life-changing stories like this one. The rain pounded against the bus windows as Marcus clutched his daughter's small backpack to his chest. The pink unicorn pattern was faded now, just like his hopes. 3 job rejections in one day. The weight of single parenthood had never felt heavier on his shoulders. His 6-year-old daughter Emma would be waiting at after-school care, expecting good news, expecting dinner. He had neither to give her. The bus lurched to a stop, and a flood of passengers pushed their way inside, escaping the downpour. Marcus slid closer to the window, making room, but kept his gaze fixed on the streaking raindrops. They reminded him of the tears he couldn't afford to shed. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Marcus looked up to see a well-dressed man gesturing to the empty space beside him. Without waiting for an answer, the stranger sat down, his expensive suit immediately pressing against Marcus's worn jeans. The contrast between them couldn't have been more stark, one man's Italian leather briefcase against another's dollar store backpack. "Terrible weather we're having," the stranger commented, shaking water from his umbrella. Marcus nodded politely but said nothing. He wasn't in the mood for small talk, especially not with someone who clearly had no idea what it meant to worry about keeping the lights on. The bus hit a pothole, and the stranger's shoulder bumped against Marcus's. "Sorry about that," he said with a smile that seemed genuine. "I'm Richard, by the way." "Marcus," he replied, more out of politeness than interest. Richard glanced at the unicorn backpack. "Your daughter's?" Marcus tightened his grip on the bag. "Yes. Emma. She's 6. "I have a daughter too," Richard said, his voice softening. "She's in college now. Time flies." For some reason, this simple statement broke something in Marcus. Perhaps it was the thought of Emma's future, a future he feared he couldn't provide. Or maybe it was just the culmination of too many sleepless nights and empty promises. Whatever the reason, Marcus found himself telling this stranger about the job rejections, about his struggle to make rent, about his fear of failing the one person who mattered most to him. Richard listened without interruption, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. When Marcus finally fell silent, embarrassed by his outburst, Richard reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. "I might be able to help," he said quietly. "My company is looking for someone with your background." Marcus stared at the card. Richard Bennett, CEO, Bennett Innovations. The company was worth billions. "Is this some kind of joke?" Richard shook his head. "No joke. Come to my office tomorrow at 9. We'll talk." Before Marcus could respond, the bus jerked to a stop, and Richard stood to leave. 9 o'clock, he repeated, then disappeared into the rain. Marcus sat frozen, the business card clutched in his hand. It had to be a cruel prank. Things like this didn't happen in real life. Yet the next morning, with Emma safely at school, he found himself standing outside the gleaming Bennett Innovations tower. The receptionist eyed his worn suit with barely concealed disdain but directed him to the top floor when he mentioned Richard's name. The elevator ride felt like ascending to another world, one Marcus had never belonged in. Richard's office was exactly what you'd expect from a billionaire CEO, spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Richard himself sat behind a massive desk, but rose immediately when Marcus entered. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely pleased. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Marcus admitted. "Look, I appreciate whatever this is, but I don't need charity." Richard gestured for him to sit. "This isn't charity, Marcus. It's an opportunity, for both of us." Over the next hour, Richard explained that he needed someone to head a new community outreach program. Someone who understood struggle firsthand. Someone like Marcus. "Why me?" Marcus asked, still suspicious. You don't know anything about me. Richard's expression changed then, becoming more serious. Actually, I know more than you think. He hesitated, then continued. 15 years ago, I was riding a different bus. I was drunk, depressed, and had just lost everything in a failed business venture. I was contemplating ending it all. Marcus listened, confused about where this story was going. A young man sat next to me, Richard continued. He was holding a baby, couldn't have been more than a few months old. The bus was crowded, and somehow I ended up practically sitting on his lap. I was embarrassed, apologized, but he just smiled and said something I've never forgotten. Richard's eyes met Marcus's. He whispered, "It's okay, man. We all need someone to lean on sometimes. Whatever you're going through, it gets better. Look at this little girl, she's counting on me, and that's enough reason to keep fighting." Marcus felt a chill run through him. The memory surfaced slowly, a drunken stranger, Emma just 3 months old, a crowded bus. "That was you," Richard said softly. "You and baby Emma. I never knew your name, but I recognized you yesterday." That whisper changed everything for me, Marcus. I didn't end my life that night. Instead, I started over, built this company. And I've been looking for you ever since, to thank you. Marcus sat stunned, the weight of this revelation settling over him. He had no recollection of his words having such an impact. He'd just been a young, terrified new father, doing his best to stay positive despite his own struggles. "I don't remember saying anything profound," Marcus finally managed. "The most profound things rarely seem that way to the person saying them," Richard replied. "You saved my life with that simple human kindness. Now I'd like to return the favor, not with charity, but with a real opportunity. The job is yours if you want it. Good salary, benefits, flexible hours for Emma." Marcus wanted to refuse, to maintain his pride, but Emma's face flashed in his mind. Her future. Her needs. "I'll take it," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. That decision marked the beginning of a new chapter for Marcus and Emma. The job wasn't easy. Richard was a demanding boss who expected excellence, but it was fulfilling. Marcus discovered talents he never knew he possessed, and within a year, he had expanded the outreach program to help hundreds of struggling families. Emma thrived too. With financial stability came opportunities, dance classes, better schools, a small but comfortable apartment. Richard became a fixture in their lives, a mentor to Marcus and something of an uncle to Emma. 3 years after that rainy day on the bus, Marcus sat in Richard's office for their weekly meeting. The outreach program had become the crown jewel of Bennett Innovations, generating positive press and, more importantly, making a real difference in the community. "I have a proposition for you," Richard said, sliding a folder across the desk. "I want to make you a partner in the company." Marcus opened the folder to find legal documents outlining a substantial ownership stake in Bennett Innovations. "This is too much," he protested. "I haven't earned this." Richard leaned forward. "You earned it 15 years ago on that bus. And you've earned it every day since with your work here. You understand what our clients need because you've been where they are. That perspective is invaluable." Marcus thought about how far he'd come, about the security he could now provide for Emma, about the thousands of families they'd helped together. "Okay," he said finally. "Partners." They shook hands, and as Marcus turned to leave, Richard called after him. "By the way, Emma's college fund is taken care of. I set up a trust." Marcus stopped, overwhelmed by emotion. "Why do all this for us?" Richard smiled. "Because 15 years ago, a stranger let me sit on his lap and whispered hope into my ear when I needed it most. Sometimes the smallest kindnesses create the biggest ripples." Years later, when Emma graduated from college with honors, both Marcus and Richard sat in the audience, bursting with pride. She had grown into a compassionate, brilliant young woman who planned to work in social services, helping children from disadvantaged backgrounds. At the celebration dinner afterward, Richard raised his glass in a toast to Emma, who inspired her father to say the words that saved my life. And to Marcus, who taught me that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch. Emma looked confused. What words, exactly? Marcus and Richard exchanged a glance, and together they recounted the story of that rainy day on the bus, of a whisper that changed everything, of how sometimes the universe brings people together in the most unexpected ways. So you see, Richard concluded, your father sat on a bus with a baby in his arms and changed a stranger's life forever without even realizing it. That's the power each of us holds, to impact others in ways we may never know. Emma wiped away tears. That's beautiful, she said. But Dad, how did you stay so positive back then? You were struggling as a single father, barely making ends meet. Marcus reached for his daughter's hand. Because of you, he said simply. You gave me a reason to keep going, to keep believing things would get better. And they did. The three of them sat together, bound by a chance encounter and the ripple effects of a single moment of human connection. Their story was a testament to the fact that sometimes, the most profound changes begin with the smallest actions, a seat offered on a bus, a kind word to a stranger, a whisper of hope in a moment of despair. As for Marcus, he never rode the bus without offering a smile to his fellow passengers. You never knew, after all, when a simple kindness might change someone's life forever. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the power of human connection. Remember, you never know how your smallest actions might change someone else's world completely. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us about a time when a small act of kindness changed your life. The years passed, and Bennett Innovations continued to grow, but with a different focus than most corporations. Under the joint leadership of Marcus and Richard, the company became known for its ethical business practices and commitment to community development. Their outreach programs expanded nationwide, helping thousands of struggling families find stability and opportunity. Emma, now 30, had established her own nonprofit organization that partnered with Bennett Innovations. Her work focused specifically on single parents, providing resources, job training, and emotional support. She often shared her father's story as inspiration, though she kept Richard's identity private out of respect for his wishes. On a crisp autumn evening, the three of them gathered at Richard's estate to celebrate the 10th anniversary of their partnership. The garden was illuminated with soft lights, and a small table was set for an intimate dinner. I have something to tell you both, Richard said as they finished their meal. He looked older now, his hair completely silver, but his eyes still held the same intensity. I've been diagnosed with a heart condition. The doctors say I have a year, maybe two. The news hit Marcus like a physical blow. Over the years, Richard had become more than a business partner, he was family. There must be something we can do, he insisted. Specialists, experimental treatments. Richard raised a hand to stop him. I've explored all the options. I've made peace with it. He smiled, the expression serene rather than sad. I've had 15 more years than I would have if not for you, Marcus. 15 extraordinary years. That's a gift beyond measure. Emma reached across the table to take Richard's hand. What can we do? Live well, Richard replied simply. Continue the work we've started. And there's one more thing. He pulled an envelope from his jacket and handed it to Marcus. I've updated my will. When I'm gone, my controlling interest in the company passes to you and Emma. Marcus shook his head. Richard, no. That should go to your daughter. Melissa has her own path, Richard said. She's a brilliant artist with no interest in business. She'll be well provided for, but she agrees that you and Emma should carry on the company's mission. You understand its heart in a way no one else could. That night, as Marcus drove home, he found himself thinking about the strange symmetry of life. A chance encounter on a bus had altered the trajectory of both their lives, creating ripples that continued to spread outward, touching countless others. The next morning, Marcus made a decision. He called a meeting with the company's board of directors and proposed a new initiative, the Bennett Hayes Foundation, dedicated to transforming public transportation into spaces of community and connection. The foundation would not only improve bus and train services in underserved areas but would train drivers and staff to recognize signs of distress in passengers and provide resources for those in need. Because sometimes, Marcus explained to the board, a bus isn't just transportation. Sometimes it's where lives intersect, where hope is born, where futures change course. The initiative was approved unanimously. 6 months later, the first connection bus hit the streets. It looked like an ordinary city bus from the outside, but inside, subtle differences created an environment designed to foster human interaction. Seats were arranged to make conversation easier. Inspirational stories from local community members were displayed on digital screens. Drivers were trained in basic mental health first aid. Richard was there for the launch, thinner now but still standing tall. As he and Marcus watched the bus pull away from the curb, Richard leaned close and whispered, "Full circle." Marcus nodded, understanding completely. Richard lived another 18 months, long enough to see the Connection Bus program expand to 3 more cities, long enough to witness Emma's nonprofit receive national recognition, long enough to know that his legacy was secure. On the day of his funeral, it rained, a gentle, cleansing rain that reminded Marcus of that fateful day on the bus. The service was small, as Richard had requested, but the impact of his life was evident in the hundreds of letters and messages that poured in from people whose lives had been changed by his and Marcus's work. After the service, Melissa, Richard's daughter, approached Marcus and Emma. "Dad told me the bus story so many times," she said, smiling through tears. "He said it was proof that the universe has a plan, even when we can't see it." "Do you believe that?" Emma asked. Melissa considered the question. "I believe that kindness creates possibilities that didn't exist before. And that's a kind of magic, isn't it?" As they stood together under the shelter of a large oak tree, Marcus spotted a city bus pulling up to a stop across the street. The side of the bus bore the Bennett Hayes Foundation logo, a simple image of 2 hands reaching toward each other. "He's still here," Marcus said softly. "In every person who finds hope on one of those buses, in every connection made, in every life changed." Emma slipped her hand into her father's. "And so are you, Dad. Your whisper started it all." Marcus squeezed her hand, watching as passengers boarded the bus, strangers whose lives would intersect for a brief moment in time, each carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own potential to change someone else's world with a simple act of kindness. "We never know, do we?" he mused. "We never know which moment, which word, which action might be the one that changes everything." The bus pulled away from the curb, continuing its journey through the rain-washed streets. And somewhere on board, perhaps, another story was just beginning. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more stories that remind us of our shared humanity and the incredible power of connection. Remember, the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that transform lives in ways we may never fully know. What whisper will you share today that might change someone's tomorrow?